The night was quiet in a way that made every small sound feel loud. Even the crickets seemed to sing more softly, as if they too understood that this night was different. 12-year-old Elijah lay on a thin blanket on the wooden floor of the cabin. The air was warm, but his skin felt cold. He stared at the ceiling, tracing the dark lines between the old wooden boards, pretending they were rivers on a map that led somewhere far away. Beside him, his little sister, Lila, slept curled into a small ball. Her breath was slow and even. Elijah listened to it, counting each rise and fall of her chest, afraid that if he stopped counting, something might go wrong. Their mother, Ruth, sat near the door, her back against the wall. She was not sleeping. She hadn't slept much in weeks. Outside, the plantation rested under a wide sky full of stars. The moon was only a thin silver curve, just enough light to turn the path into a pale ribbon through the fields. This was the night. Ruth reached into the pocket of her dress and took out a small piece of cloth. Inside it were 3 things: a broken button, a dry piece of cornbread, and a tiny wooden star Elijah had carved with a sharp stone months ago. She held the wooden star in her palm for a moment, then stood. "Elijah," she whispered. He sat up at once. His heart had been awake all night. She knelt beside him and brushed his hair back gently. "It's time, my brave boy." Elijah nodded. He carefully shook Lila's shoulder. "Little bird," he whispered, the name he called her when he wanted her to wake without fear. Lila opened her eyes slowly. "Is it morning?" she asked in a sleepy voice. "Not yet," said Ruth softly, "but we're going to take a long walk, a quiet one." They had planned this night in whispers and glances. For many evenings, Ruth had told Elijah stories about the sky. She pointed out the stars when they were allowed outside, teaching him to find the one that did not move much, the North Star. "That star knows the way," she had said. "If you follow it, it will lead you toward freedom." Elijah had listened carefully. He memorized the shape of the sky. He imagined the stars as small lanterns, hung by kind hands to light the way for those who had none. Now, as they stepped out of the cabin, the night air wrapped around them like a cool blanket. They walked without shoes. Shoes made noise. Bare feet learned to move gently over dirt and grass. Elijah held Lila's hand. Ruth walked just behind them, her hand resting on Elijah's shoulder. They did not look back. The fields stretched wide and dark, but beyond them lay trees. Tall trees, kind trees, Ruth had said. Trees that could hide them. As they walked, the world felt larger than it ever had before. Every sound, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, felt like a voice speaking in the dark. Elijah's heart beat fast, but he breathed slowly, just as his mother had taught him. "Slow breath in," she had said. "Slow breath out. Fear grows loud when breath grows small." They reached the edge of the trees and slipped into the forest. The ground changed here, becoming softer, covered in leaves and old pine needles. Their footsteps became whispers. The forest smelled of earth and green things. It felt like stepping into another world. They walked for a long time. When Lila grew tired, Ruth lifted her into her arms. Elijah wanted to offer to carry her, but he knew he needed his strength. Instead, he walked close, placing his small hand against his sister's back, feeling her warm breath through the thin cloth of her dress. At one point, they heard dogs far away. Elijah froze. Ruth placed a finger to her lips.
They stood very still, listening. The sound faded, drifting away like a bad dream dissolving at morning. They moved again, slower now. When their legs grew heavy, Ruth led them to a fallen tree covered in soft moss. They rested there, hidden by shadows. The stars blinked through the leaves above, gentle and patient. Ruth pulled the cornbread from the cloth and broke it into 3 pieces. They ate slowly, quietly, as if each bite were a promise that they would live to taste another day. "Elijah," whispered Leela, her eyes half closed, "are we going to a place with birds?" "Yes," he said softly, "and rivers, and people who smile in the morning." Ruth smiled at that, though her eyes shone with tears. They rested until their breathing slowed and the night felt calm again. Then they walked on.
The land rose and fell. Sometimes roots reached out like hands from the ground, and Elijah carefully guided Leela's steps when she walked again. The North Star remained their quiet guide, steady and sure. As the hours passed, Elijah's thoughts drifted like leaves on water. He remembered small things, the sound of his mother singing when Leela was a baby, the way sunlight sometimes touched the dust in the cabin and made it glow like tiny stars of its own. The forest thinned near a stream. The water moved softly, reflecting the sky. Ruth guided them along the edge of the water for a while. "Water carries away footprints," she whispered. The stream sang to them as they walked, a low, gentle song. It made Elijah feel less alone in the dark. Eventually, the sky began to change. The black of night softened into deep blue. The stars faded one by one, like candles being blown out by careful breaths. They reached a small hill just as the first hint of morning brushed the horizon. Ruth led them behind a cluster of rocks and tall grass. They lay down, hidden from the open land below. The world held its breath as the sun slowly rose, painting the sky with soft colors. For the first time in hours, Elijah felt his body relax. They slept there, wrapped in each other's warmth, as the morning birds began to sing. When Elijah woke, the sun was higher, but the air was still cool. He felt a strange lightness in his chest, not joy exactly, but something close to it, something like the quiet space where fear used to live. Ruth looked out over the land and smiled a tired, peaceful smile. "We're closer," she whispered. "Not there yet, but closer." Elijah squeezed her hand. He did not ask how much farther. Some questions were heavy. This one could wait. They ate wild berries Ruth had learned to recognize long ago. Their fingers turned purple, and Leela laughed silently at the color, covering her mouth to keep the sound small. They would walk again when the shadows grew longer. They would rest again when the night returned. They would follow the quiet star, one gentle step at a time. And though the road was long, the night had taught them something important. Even in darkness there were lights. Even in fear there were soft places to rest. And even in a world that had tried to keep them small, their hope had grown wide enough to carry them forward. Under the watchful sky, they continued their journey, slowly, quietly, and together, toward a morning that would one day be called freedom.